I gave that company 6 years of my life. 6 years of missed birthdays, of cold dinners eaten at my desk under fluorescent light, of nodding through meetings where my name was never mentioned, but my work was on every slide. I wasn't chasing fame, just fairness. A simple good job would have been enough, but even that was too expensive for my boss. When I joined the firm, I was 27, full of ideas and stupid optimism. Back then, I believed that hard work always pays off. I remember the smell of burnt coffee in the break room, the hum of computers at 7 a.m., when the office was still asleep and I was already knee-deep in numbers. My boss, Mark, used to joke that I was the company's engine. I laughed back then. It sounded like a compliment. Now I know better. I was the engine because he liked driving. There's a strange kind of silence that happens when people expect your name to be called, and it isn't. The day of the promotion meeting, that silence filled the entire conference room. Mark stood there in his pressed navy suit, smiling like a man who had just done something generous. Behind him, the company logo glowed on the screen, celebrating excellence. I was sitting in the front row. Everyone knew I was next in line for the promotion. Project lead on 3 major contracts. I'd saved the company over $2 million in the last fiscal year. My team had whispered it for weeks. It's got to be you, man. You earned it. Even Mark had patted my back in the hallway 2 days earlier, saying, "You'll like what's coming Friday." So when he announced the new regional manager, and it wasn't me, the room froze. He said another name, Tyler, the guy who joined 2 years ago, who spent more time talking about golf than actually working. The applause was hesitant at first, then awkwardly filled the air like people were clapping to cover up the tension. Mark walked over to me, grinning, hand outstretched. "Don't take it personally," he said, leaning in. "You're too valuable where you are. Some people are leaders. Some are doers." That word stuck to my skin like something dirty. Doer. I smiled. I even shook his hand. But inside, something snapped. Not loudly, not like in movies where you throw your chair or storm out. It was quiet, like a light going out in a room no one was in. After the meeting, people avoided my eyes. 1 or 2 offered those useless lines. "You'll get it next time," or they just needed Tyler's connections. I laughed it off, pretended I was fine. That night, I sat in the parking lot for almost an hour, engine running, watching everyone else drive away. I didn't feel angry yet, just empty. When I got home, I poured myself a drink I didn't even want and opened my laptop. There it was, the congratulatory email from HR, listing the new positions. My name wasn't on it. But my project was mentioned in every line of praise. Under Tyler's leadership, the team achieved record profits. I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred. Tyler's leadership, my work, my overtime, my weekends, his credit. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people who smile while they're taking everything you've built. The next morning I went in early again. Habit. The office smelled of carpet cleaner and stale air. Mark walked in around 9, his usual swagger in place, carrying that overpriced coffee he always bragged about. "Rough day yesterday, huh?" he said, pretending to care. "Don't worry. Your time will come. Maybe next quarter." I looked at him, really looked at him. The polished shoes, the fake sympathy, the way he tilted his head like a man speaking to a pet. For the first time, I realized I didn't respect him. I'd been mistaking fear for respect for years. That day, I worked like a ghost. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. A week later, Tyler called a team meeting to discuss future goals. He used my slides, my numbers, my strategy. He didn't even bother to change the formatting. I watched him stand in front of the team and talk about his vision, and the only thing I could think about was how small my name looked in the corner of the presentation. The place where I'd written it out of habit, not pride. That night, I drove home with the windows down, the wind freezing against my face. I remember thinking, maybe this is just how the world works. Maybe the good guys are meant to be invisible. But then something shifted. The following Monday, Mark sent me a quick message. Need you to prep next week's client deck and grab my dry cleaning on your way back from lunch. That was the moment. Not the promotion, not the humiliation, that. Because I realized I wasn't invisible. They saw me clearly. They just liked keeping me small. That night, I didn't stay late. I packed my laptop, closed the project files, and drove home before the sun went down. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was done being their engine. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet drive home was the start of everything that would come next. The next few weeks felt like a slow poison. I still showed up every morning before everyone else, not because I cared anymore, but because I didn't know what else to do. When you've built your life around being useful, stopping feels like dying. Tyler strutted around like a new king, asking me to run the numbers real quick or draft that proposal, while he took long lunches with Mark. He started copying my phrases in meetings, even my jokes. Everyone noticed, but nobody said anything. People don't defend the quiet guy. They just watch him fade. Every time I passed Mark's office, I could hear laughter. That fake, too loud kind that says we're talking about something we shouldn't. Once I heard my name, then silence. At lunch one day, I sat alone in the cafeteria, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to notice when the rest of my team chose a table across the room. It wasn't cruelty, not exactly. It was convenience. They didn't want to sit next to the guy who'd been overlooked. Like it might be contagious. One afternoon, Mark dropped a file on my desk without even looking up from his phone. "Need this cleaned up by tonight," he said. "You're good at making things look nice." That word again, nice. The tone he used, like I was a housekeeper tidying his mess. I waited until he left, then opened the file. It was Tyler's report, riddled with mistakes. Wrong data, inconsistent metrics, typos everywhere. I fixed every line, formatted it perfectly, sent it back. The next morning, Mark forwarded it to the board with the subject line, "Great work, Tyler." Exactly what we needed. No mention of me, not even a copy. That's when the irritation started to turn into something sharper. I stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, started taking walks instead. Long walks around the city, headphones in, replaying every conversation. Every time I'd said, "Sure, I can handle that." Every time I'd covered for someone else's incompetence. I realized something simple and brutal. I had built a cage out of good intentions. One evening, I was leaving late, not to impress anyone, just because I didn't want to go home and sit in silence. The janitor, an older guy named Ramon, looked up from his mop and said, "You work too much, man." I laughed. "Not anymore." He gave me this look, half pity, half wisdom. "They don't see you. You know that, right?" "I know," I said, "but I used to think they would someday." Ramon shrugged. "Some people only look up when they fall." I didn't understand what he meant then. Later, I would. A few days after that, Mark called me into his office. He gestured to the chair, but didn't wait for me to sit. "Listen," he said, "you've been a real asset here, but I'm worried you're burning out. Maybe you should take a break, recharge. Don't want you dragging the team down." It took me a second to process it. Dragging the team down. The same team that built its success on my work. I kept my voice calm. "You want me to take unpaid leave?" He smiled. That politician smile. "Just a week or two. It'll be good for you. Tyler can cover your accounts for now." For the first time in my life, I didn't argue. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out. He thought he'd humbled me. In truth, he'd freed me. That night, I opened my laptop again, but not for company work. I started sketching ideas for something new. My own thing, something that didn't depend on men like Mark. I didn't know where to start. I had no investors, no plan, no connections. But I had skills. I knew how to build systems, how to solve problems, how to make things run. For years, I'd been the engine behind someone else's success. Maybe it was time to drive my own road. I spent nights researching small business grants, online courses, anything. My apartment became a mix of coffee cups, sticky notes, and late-night playlists. I stopped shaving. My friends noticed I'd disappeared, but I didn't care. I was done being available. Mark emailed me twice during my break. Once to ask if I'd had time to think about my attitude. The second time to send a list of tasks for when I got back. I didn't answer either. By the end of the month, something inside me had changed. I didn't see myself as an employee anymore. I was already gone. I just hadn't told them yet. The final straw came when Tyler accidentally copied me on an email thread with Mark. It read, "We should consider letting him go after Q2. He's slowing down, and honestly, the team's better without him." I remember sitting there, staring at the screen. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just smiled. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. The next morning, I printed my resignation letter, signed it, and placed it neatly on Mark's desk before anyone arrived. I didn't leave a note, didn't wait for confrontation. I just walked out. When I stepped outside, the air felt different. Heavier, but real. Like breathing after being underwater for too long. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if I'd succeed or fall flat on my face. But I knew one thing for sure. I'd rather starve building something of my own than feast building someone else's throne. And that decision, that quiet, defiant moment, would cost them everything. Leaving felt good for about a week. Then came the silence, the kind that creeps into your apartment at night, sits beside you on the couch, and whispers that maybe you made the biggest mistake of your life. I had some savings, not much. Enough for a few months if I was careful. I'd written "Start Something Real" on a whiteboard in my living room, underlined twice. But every time I looked at it, it felt more like a joke. The first few weeks were chaos. I didn't know what to build, only that I needed to build something. I kept replaying Mark's voice in my head. "You're too valuable where you are." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was only valuable when someone else needed me. But around the third week, while reorganizing my old project files, I found a folder labeled "Rejected Concepts." It was full of ideas Mark had shot down over the years, tools to optimize workflow, client dashboards, automation models. All mine, all ignored. I spent the next 48 hours straight sketching out one of them, a simple platform that could save companies time and money by streamlining internal reports. Nothing glamorous, just practical, something that actually worked. I called an old coworker, Sam, the only person in that place who ever treated me like an equal. He'd left a year before after clashing with Mark. When I told him my idea, he laughed. "You mean the one you pitched in 2019 that they laughed at?" "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You still got the prototype?" That's how it started. 2 laptops, a coffee table, and 2 people who'd had enough of being underestimated. The first 3 months were brutal. We worked 14 hours a day, living off cheap takeout and caffeine. Every bug we fixed created 3 more. Every client pitch ended with polite rejection. "Looks interesting, but we're not sure it fits our budget." I stopped checking my bank account because it made my stomach hurt. Some nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I should have stayed at that desk, swallowing pride for a paycheck. Then one night, around 2 a.m., an email pinged. A small logistics company wanted to test our platform. "We like your approach," the message said. "Can you start Monday?" I remember staring at that line like it was a miracle. It wasn't a big contract, barely enough to cover rent, but it was something. The first test went better than we hoped. The client's reports that usually took 3 hours now ran in 15 minutes. They told 2 of their partners, and suddenly we had 3 more calls lined up. 6 months later, we signed our first serious deal. Then another. The money wasn't huge yet, but it was consistent. For the first time, I felt like I was steering the ship instead of rowing it for someone else. Mark had taught me how to build efficiency. What he never realized was that he'd also taught me everything not to do. Don't lie, don't take credit, don't treat people like they're replaceable. By month 9, we had an office. Small, but ours. The kind where the floor still smells like fresh paint and you're too proud to complain about the broken air conditioner. I hired 2 interns. Sam handled operations. I handled development and clients. And then it happened. The call. A mid-sized manufacturing company wanted to implement our system company-wide. The deal was worth over $400,000. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath when they said, "We're in." When the payment cleared, my hands were shaking. Sam popped a bottle of cheap champagne we couldn't afford. We didn't say much, just laughed, exhausted and delirious. A week later, I got an email from our accountant. "Congratulations. You've hit your first-year bonus threshold." Attached was the document. I opened it. $155,000. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Then I just sat there, staring at the number, remembering every time I'd been told I wasn't ready. Every smirk, every maybe next quarter. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was something quieter. Relief, like my lungs had finally remembered how to work. I transferred half to savings, paid off my debts, and then almost impulsively drove to a dealership. I wasn't even planning to buy anything. I just wanted to see what success looked like. And there it was. A deep, metallic blue Mercedes AMG. Sleek, deliberate, unapologetic. I ran my hand along the hood and thought, this isn't about showing off. This is about remembering I did this myself. I signed the papers. The salesman shook my hand, smiling like he knew this was more than a purchase. It was a declaration. Driving it home felt surreal. The city lights blurred past, the hum of the engine beneath me like a heartbeat. I wasn't thinking about Mark or Tyler. I was thinking about the janitor, Ramon, and his words. Some people only look up when they fall. He'd been right, and I had a feeling some people were about to fall hard. A week later, our company got featured in a business magazine. Small article, local circulation, but enough for LinkedIn to light up. Old colleagues liked the post. Some messaged me congratulations. Even people I barely remembered from the firm commented, "Knew you'd make it someday." And then, a new message. From Mark. "Hey, long time no talk. Just saw the article. Great stuff, man. We should catch up sometime. I might have a few clients who could use what you're doing." I stared at it for a long minute. The same man who once told me I was too valuable where I was, now pretending we were equals. I didn't reply. I just smiled. But that car, that symbol of every sleepless night and every quiet humiliation, it had a story left to tell. Because a week later, that story drove right past Mark's office. The day I saw him again wasn't planned. I wasn't thinking about the past. I'd just finished a client meeting downtown, grabbed a coffee, and was walking back to the parking lot where my car waited. My deep blue AMG, sunlight sliding along its perfect curve like it was proud to exist. I was halfway across the street when I heard a voice. Loud, fake friendly, unmistakable. "Hey, wait! Is that you?" I turned. Mark, he looked almost the same, just a little older, heavier, the kind of tired that money can't fix. He was standing outside the restaurant I'd just passed. A few clients around him, all dressed in the same corporate uniform. Blue suits, expensive watches, eyes that never stopped calculating. For a second, he didn't seem sure it was me. Then his face lit up. The politician's smile. "Man, look at you. I barely recognized you." I smiled back, polite, measured. "Guess we've both changed." His eyes slid to the car behind me. "That yours?" "Yeah," I said simply. He let out a low whistle. "AMG, huh? Must be doing pretty well for yourself." I could feel his curiosity burning through the surface of that sentence. He wanted to ask how, wanted to know what I'd done, who'd backed me, what miracle had replaced the man he used to dismiss. Instead, he laughed. "Hey, I've actually been meaning to reach out. Saw your company mentioned somewhere. Impressive stuff. Maybe we could collaborate sometime. You know, like old times." I took a sip of my coffee, studying him. His tie was crooked. His eyes were tired. There was a faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, the look of a man pretending to be in control. Old times, I said, calm, almost soft. You mean when you took credit for my work? Or when you told me I was too valuable to promote? He shifted uncomfortably. Come on, don't be like that. You know how corporate life is. Politics, timing, the higher-ups. I cut him off. You don't need to explain, Mark. I should actually thank you. He blinked. Thank me? Yeah, I said, setting down my cup on the roof of the car. If you hadn't ignored me, I'd still be sitting in that office, making your PowerPoints look good. You made sure I'd never forget how small I was. So I decided to grow somewhere else. For a moment, he said nothing. Just stood there, mouth slightly open, like his script had disappeared. Then he tried to laugh it off. Well, hey, no hard feelings, right? Maybe we can grab lunch, talk about opportunities. I've got clients looking for tech partners. I stepped closer, close enough for him to see that the polite smile on my face wasn't the same one he used to see in the office. You already taught me everything I needed to know, Mark, mostly how not to treat people. His grin faltered. He looked like a man realizing too late that the balance had shifted, that the person he'd once kept beneath his thumb now stood beyond his reach. Behind him, one of his clients cleared his throat, looking from me to the car, then back to Mark. The unspoken question was obvious. Who's really in charge here? I picked up my coffee, opened the door, and said quietly, Take care of yourself, Mark. Then I slid behind the wheel, the door closing with a soft, satisfying click. The engine purred to life, deep, confident, steady. I didn't look back when I pulled out. I didn't need to. I could feel his stare burning into the back of the car as I drove away. For a long time, I thought revenge would feel like fire. Something loud, explosive, but it didn't. It felt like silence, like the absence of bitterness, like finally being free. That evening, I parked by the river. The sun was setting, gold dissolving into the water, the city buzzing in the distance. I sat there for a while, just listening to the hum of the engine and my own heartbeat. I thought about all the versions of myself that had existed in that company. The eager kid, the invisible worker, the quiet doer. I thought about how hard I'd tried to be seen. And then I realized I didn't need to be seen by them, not anymore, because I'd already built something that spoke louder than any applause could. My phone buzzed, a message from Sam. New contract came through. They accepted the proposal. Congrats, boss. I smiled at the word, boss, not because of power, because of ownership, because I'd finally become the person I was waiting for someone else to recognize. I started the car again and let it roll down the road. Not fast, just steady. The city lights reflected off the hood, the world opening up ahead. They thought I wanted revenge. I only wanted peace. And for the first time in 6 years, I had it.